Hello everyone, really good to have you along our wasabi growing trial, a trial to determine whether we can grow wasabi here in the desert environment of Southern California. There's a weather event happening behind me and it's making me look like a liar. We're expected to get 5 inches of rain. With rain, that doesn't look very much like a desert, but please believe me when I tell you I'm in the desert. Today we'll look at how they're doing, and then afterwards we'll do a recap on this project to bring everyone up to speed who are just joining along. So good to have you once again, and let's start by looking at the plants. So here's our 3 wasabi plants that are growing in the stream bed here. This is our newest addition, Shemp. He took the place of Mo, who went and decided he didn't want to be here anymore. He's from the Wasabi Store, and when he arrived, his stalk was a little bit thicker than my thumb. Compared to these guys here from Richter's Herbs, the stalk was very, very tiny, not even close to the thickness of my pinky, and probably closer to a toothpick, I would guess. So we're discovering with the 2 sources that the rate of growth is going to be dependent on the size of the plant you start with. This plant is growing quite well and quite quickly. When it started, when we received it, we got a leaf that was this size, and it's turned into this really dark green and wide looking leaf. This is very, very typical of the wasabi plants that I've seen when looking at them being grown commercially in Japan via YouTube. And this is the kind of growth that I was expecting from these plants here. But as it turns out, the slow rate of growth may be actually natural for the age of these plants. So still very, very optimistic about the growth of these plants. The only difference between the two sources is the size at which they start, and the implication on the time it takes between now and when we can harvest. So very likely we can harvest something from this plant next year or maybe the year after. These 2 plants we're probably not going to be able to harvest for another 2 years at least. So here are the side-by-side comparisons of the 2 plants. It's certainly possible to grow wasabi in the ground in warmer climate, and very likely you'll end up with leaves, but you may not end up with the stalk. So seeing a lot of leaves on your wasabi plants is not always a good indicator. The indicator will be to look at the growth that's happening underneath. So even though these younger guys are not making a lot of green big leaves, it looks like, I hope I can zoom in and it'll stay clear for you, it looks like the base of the plant, the sought after wasabi part, is growing pretty good. We can see a good amount of stalk bottom portion. Sometimes people call it a rhizome. It's not. It's technically not a rhizome, but they call it so. This rhizome is starting to form. So that's pretty encouraging for the plants here. As far as energy costs, that's going to be $45 a year, and we're going to have to wait 3 years. So that's something to keep in mind if you're sourcing plants, is how long you have to wait before they give you something to harvest. In the late morning and early afternoon, the sun will come and hit some of these plants, and I've used cardboard to shade it. with summer approaching, I'm hoping to be able to use these elephant ear plants to provide the wasabi plants with shade. We have a couple of elephant ear plant rhizomes that are in the stream bed here, and they grow very, very quickly in a bog type of environment. So hopefully they'll grow fast enough for us to not have to deal with shading the plants come spring and summer. So that's how our plants are doing as of mid-February. The plants are going to be up against warmer weather as spring arrives. So I guess the real trial is to see how they do then. And the next segment is the recap of our project. So I'll just dive right in and start by talking about the wasabi plant. Wasabi is native to parts of China, Korea, and Japan. We mostly associate it with Japan as it's commercially grown there, and it's used as a condiment as a condiment for sushi. It has antibacterial properties, and that's how wasabi that's why wasabi is associated with sushi, because of back then there wasn't refrigeration and food safety expertise. Wasabi was used to counteract some of the stomach churning events of eating raw fish that has sat in an unsafe environment for a while. As far as the myth about, as far as whether wasabi can grow outside of Japan, we're starting to learn that that's becoming a myth. Wasabi is being grown commercially outside of Japan in many parts of the world. Here in the United States, it's being grown in the Pacific Northwest. But the real question is whether it can be grown in a commercial viable way, meaning whether it takes a lot of energy and money to grow the plant or not. In this growing trial, we created a stream bed for the wasabi to grow, and we're keeping costs in mind. We're trying to grow this in a very with minimal costs, because you can grow anything if you recreate its environment, and you can throw a lot of money in recreating that environment, but it kind of defeats some of the purposes of it making sense to grow. So as a recap of the cost of this project, this stream recreation pond bed thing cost about $112 to create. Materials include these pebbles, the pond liner, the pond pump, and some of the amendments that was put in here, like peat moss and such. As far as energy costs, with the wattage of the pump, it costs about $45 a year to maintain. The plants cost, we have plants from two sources. We initially started with plants from Richter's Herbs. The plants cost about $12 each, with shipping costs of $26. The newest plants from the Wasabi Store, they cost, $14 with a $15 shipping cost. So those are the costs for the plants and how much it costs to grow them. The Wasabi Store plants, they look to be more mature, and they look like they will produce something that we can use in maybe 1 year's time or 2 years' time. These plants here are very, very young, and these guys, they're looking to be about 3 years before we're going to get something back. So a couple of things to keep in mind if you're looking to source your wasabi plants. As far as the growing medium, this is mostly pea pebble. We added some peat moss in here. As a quick backtrack, this is all experimental with a lot of hypothesis put in. with a lot of hypothesis happening. Nothing is scientifically researched. This is more an artful way of growing. So with the peat moss, the idea is that it is going to increase the acidity level of our plants. The acidity will help with the uptake of minerals for the plants, and the mineral idea came from where these guys naturally grow, which is in stream beds up in the mountainous regions where the water and the soil is mineral rich. So maybe minerals are going to be key, and for the uptake of minerals, you have to get the growing medium to a certain acidity level. Let's see here. So we have added a little bit of compost in here, but it's mostly pea pebble and water. We're getting this water running at a pretty good rate. It's important because the water will help. The running of the water will help aerate the water, and in a pond environment, you want a highly oxygen-rich environment. I won't get into details of a pond and how that works in this video, but it's very important to have your water highly oxygenated for it to be healthy. And as far as fertilizer, we have fish that small mosquito fish that live in the pond portion. I have fish tanks, and I basically rinse the filter medium into the pond, so we have additional sources of fish fertilizer in this pond. We talked a little bit about the plants. We talked about the material costs and what the materials are, and we talked about fertilizing the plants. So those are some of the things that we've talked together in the comment section about, and a lot of you guys raised really good points about putting fish in here as a way to get some additional nutrients for the plants. So yeah, so that's our update and recap of the project. I hope you stay on board and check out how they're doing. Spring is coming, and the weather's warming up, so we'll see how they're doing then. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Underneath this creeping fig hedge, we have the other wasabi plant start that we got from the wasabi store growing in the ground as a control. So that's how it's doing. Compared to the one in the aquaponics, we're not seeing the explosion in growth.